Los Angeles, California is known for its iconic Hollywood, Disneyland, and one of America's most famous UFO hotspots. The activity there is seemingly a constant, and in the last 10 years alone looks to be escalating. From as far back as the 1800s to one of the most deadly UFO battles of all time, the Southern California metropolis has had many reported incidents, including strange lights in the sky and unexplained objects in the ocean. These sightings mystify investigators and researchers to this day. Are they truly coming from the heavens above, or is there something off the coast of California that we have yet to discover? What do they want, and more importantly, why are they here? In the November of 1896, 7 years before the Wright brothers achieved human flight, Los Angeles was a small mining community of around 50,000 people, when local newspapers started to report mysterious sightings in the skies of California. It was the beginning of a phenomenon that was to continue to this day. The objects were described as metallic, featureless objects nearly 125 feet long that hovered in the night sky. The sightings soon moved down to the Californian coastline to the budding metropolis of Los Angeles. This happened years before LAX was ever imagined, and taking into consideration human flight had not even taken place. Whatever was in the skies above their heads was absolutely unexplainable. On June 14, 1992, police switchboards in Los Angeles were flooded with calls describing a very unusual sighting. Normally when someone sees a UFO, there's maybe one or two UFOs. What's really unique about this situation, in Topanga Canyon, there was a large number of UFOs that were seen. They were in the hundreds. Encountering multiple UFOs is a very rare occurrence, but what truly makes these sightings unique is how common they were seen throughout Los Angeles. There are regions on this planet that seem to be a magnet for UFO incidents. According to a scientific study known as the Project Doorway, researchers Barry Fitzgerald and Steve Mira have identified a number of key locations where UFOs seemingly manifest. These are referred to as positive magnetic regions. In a short period of time, hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of cases were reported. They are called UFO hotspots, and they can span the globe. Similar locations have been identified in China, Brussels, Belgium, and Washington, D.C. But one element makes LA unlike any other hotspot on the globe. A history of encounters occurring from Los Angeles to Long Beach to Catalina Island. Together, these locations have become known as the Devil's Triangle of the West. UFO sightings over Los Angeles have occurred pretty much since the inception of Los Angeles as a city itself. The evidence suggests that they started in the late 19th century and continued to modern times. Now that Los Angeles is a huge, sprawling megapolis, the reports of such sightings reach to tens of thousands, so many that not all reports are followed up. On February the 25th, 1942, only 3 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the city of Los Angeles was on high alert. They had just entered into the Second World War. Los Angeles was fearing another Pearl Harbor-type attack, but this time in Los Angeles itself. People were afraid they were going to be next. But on the night of February the 25th, their fears became a reality. Suddenly, in the dead of night, 100,000 people are awakened in a startling citywide blackout. Air raid sirens begin to blow, and citizens emerge from their homes to witness something in the skies over Los Angeles. The city appears to be under attack. Nobody knows what this unidentified object is, and the military steps in and does what it does best. It tries to bring it down. Anti-aircraft guns run into action against the unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area. Searchlights closely follow the object down the coast and gets its center in their glare. The military converged on the scene. They focused searchlights on it, and they actually tried to shoot it down. The soldiers at Fort MacArthur fire more than 1,400 anti-aircraft shells in a barrage that should cripple even the strongest aircraft, but the object appears unscathed. No matter what the military throws at this object, they can't penetrate whatever is protecting it. They simply couldn't bring it down. This sighting has been referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles, and for good reason. There was shrapnel falling everywhere. Some were struck by them. There was a total blackout, and the people of LA began to panic. After 1,400 rounds had fired at this thing, presumably it was undamaged because it just simply flew away out of sight of the spotlights. What was it that invaded Los Angeles that night, and why was it seemingly indestructible? Was it a secret experimental Japanese warplane, or could it have been a craft from another world? Even today, people may tell you it never happened. It was just a bunch of people panicking. Wrong. If you go back to February 1942 and look at the headlines in the LA Times, it was described as a real incident. The day after the Battle of Los Angeles, President Franklin D. Roosevelt received a secret memorandum detailing the event. It wasn't until years later, actually, through the Freedom of Information Act, that investigators and researchers were able to get a copy of this memorandum, which basically proved that this event did in fact take place. Shortly after Roosevelt reviewed the report, a statement was released to the general public, one that tells a different story. The military can't identify what exactly this object was, but they had to explain it to the public. What do? They simply claim it was a balloon. When you look at how much firepower was thrown at that thing and nothing touched it, there isn't any type of balloon that exists even today. So you can't just simply dismiss this event with the military's explanation because it doesn't make sense. But for those who were there that night, the question remains, where did the craft come from and where did it go? In the decades that followed, demands for an explanation would be met with government silence. In 1947, President Truman signed the National Security Act, which essentially concealed events like this and potentially future UFO events from the public's eye. In 1964, at the height of the Cold War, the officer in charge, Robert Jacobs, heads to the photographic squadron at Vandenberg Air Force Base in Lompoc, California. According to Jacobs, his mission was to film an Atlas rocket test through all 3 stages of flying, off the coast of Big Sur, north of Los Angeles. The Atlas was an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, developed and deployed by the US military. The missile he would film was outfitted with a dummy warhead. It was his job to actually track this rocket and film it in flight. Jacobs did his job just as he was ordered to do. However, it mysteriously failed. In his story, Lieutenant Jacobs states that he returned to Vandenberg with the films to be developed. Immediately following their processing, Jacobs was ordered to report to his senior officer. He was called into his superior's office, Major Mansman, and there were 2 plainclothes people there who wanted to question him about what had occurred. Jacobs was shown the film he took. He and the others watched the film of the rocket launching and then in flight prior to it mysteriously failing. According to Lieutenant Jacobs, at this stage, a saucer-shaped craft entered the frame. It's maneuvering around this rocket, which is traveling at many thousands of miles an hour, and all of a sudden it shoots a beam of light into the dummy warhead at the tip of the rocket, moves around, does another one, moves around, does another one, and then the dummy warhead falls off, causing the rocket to fail. The agents in the room take the footage away, and Jacobs is told by his ranking officer that he is never to speak of the incident. Could it be that Robert Jacobs witnessed an alien presence defending their territory off the coast of Southern California? Like the Battle of 1942, this encounter exposes an alien craft seeming to protect the border between California's land and sea. On November the 8th, 2010, an event occurred striking fear into the heart of Los Angeles again. An unidentified object came from the ocean and climbed in altitude, coming to rest over the city and the sky. When the military was asked about it, they had no idea what it was. They couldn't identify it. The Pentagon, which usually gives an explanation for a UFO event, had nothing to give. They made no remarks. However, there always seems to be a discrepancy between what the military tells you it knows and what the military really knows. Though the military said that they knew nothing, witnesses stated they definitely saw an object launch out of the Pacific Ocean. The fascinating thing is it might mean there's an underwater base in the Pacific Ocean or in Santa Monica Bay or in the Redondo Trench off Southern California. This has tremendous implications because when people say, how do UFOs get back and forth from outer space, the answer may be that they don't. They're right here on Earth. Is it possible that an extraterrestrial base is located under the water just outside Los Angeles? If so, why has it never been found? Could it be that the UFO portal is the evidence of an alien city just off the coast of California, a city that has only recently been discovered? Los Angeles has always been known as a paradise of beaches, but in the future, it may be known as the place we discovered aliens right beneath the waves.